What is this? When I got home from my work assignment abroad, my room was empty. Oh, the useless wife who went on a trip abroad is finally back. I turned towards the voice coming from behind me. I saw my mother-in-law grinning. What's going on? I cleaned out the trash. I threw out all your things. I was stunned. How could you do that? This is your punishment. You're a housewife, but all you do is play around. This is my apartment now. Do you get it? You've nowhere else to go now. Leave immediately. You don't seem to realize how serious this is. Disgusted, I ignored my mother-in-law's laughter and began dialing a number on my phone. Hello? Yeah, sorry, actually, my husband's mother. As my mother-in-law listened into my conversation, her face became increasingly blue. She seemed to finally realize how bad what she had done was. No way! That much money? Please forgive me! I smiled and thrusted my phone at my mother-in-law. Here you go. It's time for you to get your punishment. When my husband Joseph and I got married 6 months ago, we moved into our current home. I work from home. I met Joseph in university. We continued dating after graduating, and eventually we decided to get married. Joseph is a calm and kind man. Unfortunately, because of that, he could be indecisive and a bit of a pushover. That didn't bother me before we got married, but after getting married, I began to wish he'd be a bit more serious. Joseph's mother is a very loud and pushy person. She's someone who likes flashy things and has a particular fashion sense. If I was to ever hear her calling my name in the streets, I'd definitely pretend I don't hear her. After we moved, my very particular mother-in-law began visiting our home every day. She came up with all sorts of reasons to come over and stay until it became dark out. At the beginning, I tried convincing her to leave by saying things like, I'm worried about Joseph's father, or if it gets late, it could be dangerous outside. But it never worked. I tried explaining to her that I work from home, but 1 month passed and she didn't get it. I work from home on my laptop. I have a lot of work to do, so I'd like to focus on it. Huh? You're just lying. All you do is play around on your computer. My mother-in-law would laugh and not listen to anything I said. To top it all off, she would invite her friends to come over with her to our apartment without permission. She once brought over 5 friends, which put her in a great mood. Look, this apartment is worth $750,000. It has an amazing view, doesn't it? She showed off our apartment to all of her friends, and she forced to prepare them all snacks and tea. A few hours later, they finally finished. My mother-in-law left me to clean, and it was only natural for me to do so. We went to send her friends off. After her friends left, she came back up to our apartment. That was so much fun! It's wonderful having a son. I'm so proud of him. She jumped on the couch. Because my mother-in-law was always coming over, I could never finish my work during the day. I had to work late into the night to catch up on it. I was super sleep deprived. That day, some especially important deadlines were approaching, so I had been worrying about them since this morning. The fact that my mother-in-law forced me to host her friends on that day made me sort of boil over with anger. As I cleaned the house, I cursed my mother-in-law internally. Doing this every day? Give me a break. What's so fun? This isn't even your house. You didn't even offer to pay for everything you and your friends just ate now. You leech. Let me do my work. My mother-in-law came into the kitchen to make sure I was cleaning. Okay, I'm leaving. I plan on inviting another group of friends over next week, so see you then, she said. At that moment, I heard something pop, and I began to let everything I had been holding inside my heart out. Hey, do you realize how rude you are? This isn't your home, yet you come here every day. You brought your friends over to show off. Don't you think that's too much? I'm not your maid. How many times do I have to tell you I'm working? Let me use this opportunity to make it clear. You're bothering me. I couldn't stop it. The color of my mother-in-law's face began to change. When I finished, she began to scream back at me. Bothering you? You're my son's wife. What's wrong with me coming over to my son's house? You're just a housewife who spends all day messing around. You don't even do any housework. You can't just talk back to your husband's parents. You're the one who's gone too far. You're a freeloader. I'll remember this. She left her apartment, red-faced and in a huff. That night, I told Joseph about what had happened. I desperately asked him for help. I wonder what will happen. She's old and super stubborn, right? I don't want to be a bad son, so I think we should just listen to her. He was totally on his mother's side. This was the first time Joseph spoke so firmly about something, which surprised me. Usually, he was the type of person to vaguely answer or run away if I tried to ask him for advice. This was the first time a conversation of ours has ended like this. I thought he would understand me at least a little bit, so I was very disappointed. From that day, I stopped trusting in Joseph. In the middle of that weird atmosphere, I suddenly got called on for a 2-week-long business trip abroad. When I told Joseph, saying it's just work is an excuse, right? You're actually just going for fun, aren't you? He was suspicious of me. Joseph had never gone on a business trip before, so I assumed that's why he didn't understand. Honestly, I was pretty excited for this opportunity to work abroad, but I couldn't help but think about my mother-in-law. I felt uneasy about what she would do during the 2 weeks I was going to be away. My business trip finished without any problems, and I returned home to the States. I was still feeling uneasy, but I felt happy to be home and thought about how Joseph must have been lonely while I was away. I told Joseph I'd be coming back today, so he should be home. I rang from the first floor of the apartment building. There was no reply. I rang again, but the apartment entrance still didn't open. That's weird. With no other choice, I dragged my heavy luggage up to our apartment building by myself. When I got to our apartment, I tried unlocking the door, but there was a chain in place. He's here. Is he asleep? Through the crack of the door, I called for Joseph to wake him up. I rang the doorbell again. Finally, I heard the footstep sounds, but it wasn't Joseph. It was my mother-in-law, appeared with an annoyed look on her face. She stood at the doorway and began to speak. What are you doing in my apartment? I hadn't entered my home yet, and I already had to deal with this. What kind of joke is that? Please open the door. You're the one who seems to be joking. You're not the owner of this apartment. Please give me a break. I was drowsy from jet lag and I wanted to rest as soon as possible. Don't you know? The apartment is under my name now, so I won't let you in. My mother-in-law spoke with a triumphant look on her face. I had no idea what she was saying. Excuse me? What do you mean? Do you really think you can do this? She wouldn't listen to me at all. Do you really think you can do this? You're just a housewife, but you left behind my son on a 2-week-long vacation. We're kicking you out. Haven't I told you both before that I went for work? She still wouldn't let me in the house. Give up. None of your things are here anymore. She threw me a key to a storage facility and shut the door. I was stunned. I tried to call Joseph, but he wouldn't pick up. I needed to rest, so I dragged my suitcase with me and went to the closest hotel nearby. I laid on my hotel bed. I could feel myself fill with anger. I made a phone call. That morning, I headed back to my apartment building and rang from the entrance. Yes? I heard my mother-in-law call from the apartment building. Without a word, I entered the apartment building. Climbing in my apartment, I unlocked the door and spoke into the apartment. Please unlock the chain. When my mother-in-law realized it was me, she yelled at me to go away. Please let me in. If you don't undo the chain, I will report you to the police and make a huge scene. Is that okay with you? Imagine how embarrassing it'll be with all the neighbors see that. My mother-in-law responded to my threats and undid the chain lock. The inside of our apartment had completely changed in the last 2 weeks. Where did she even find those tasteless cushions and gaudy curtains? In the middle of the living room, there was a red carpet, bright enough to make your eyes hurt. I felt my head ache from the decor in the apartment. My mother-in-law was sulking on the couch. I asked her about the rights to the apartment. Did you really change the apartment into your name? I did. I'm sure someone like you would consider it a ridiculously long and difficult process, but I'm different than you. She had a proud look on her face. Really? It's not easy to do, is it? Where did you do it? Can you show me the documents? You should have a copy, right? I asked her because I knew there was no way she had anything. I didn't do it. My clever son did it for me. So this time she planned on bringing in Joseph. Really? Then let me ask Joseph about it. I walked towards the bedroom. Don't go around my house without permission. My mother-in-law screamed, but I didn't care. Joseph slept all day during the weekends, so I knew he'd be in the bedroom. I opened the bedroom door without knocking and slapped him across the face. I pulled Joseph and his mother to sit at the table. Joseph looked down guilty, while his mother was boiling with anger. I asked them about the rights to the apartment building again. I heard you gave the rights to your mother. How did you do that? Joseph's eyes filled with tears. My mom kept saying she wanted that apartment, he replied in a muffled voice. She wanted it, so you gave it. Isn't that a little strange? How did you do that? My mother-in-law chimed in. What's wrong with my son giving me an apartment as a present? All that matters is that he did the paperwork. She laughed, satisfied with herself. Joseph gave a cold glare and began calling someone on the speakerphone. What are you doing? My mother-in-law said in an annoyed voice. The call connected. I'm sitting with the two of them. I'll leave it to you. Joseph slumped his shoulders even more. Got it. Let me explain. I understand you're occupying my property. If you intend to stay in the house, you'll have to pay $8,000 monthly in rent. You have three choices. You can pay the $8,000 in rent, leave the apartment, or if you stay in the apartment without paying the rent, I will report you for forgery and breaking and entering. My mother-in-law's face went pale. The real owner of this apartment was actually my sister. Right as Joseph and I got married, my sister sent to work abroad. So she left us to live in her apartment. Since we've been taking care of her apartment while she was away, she left us the apartment for free. Thanks, sis. I'll take it from here. Get it together. If anything comes up, call me. I laughed and hung up the phone. I turned to Joseph. What you did was illegal. Why don't you explain everything to us? At last, Joseph began to speak. My mother kept pushing me and telling me to give her the apartment. Annoyed, I just answered, yeah, but she misunderstood. She went far, so I couldn't go back. My mother-in-law was in a state of shock, and her whole body shook. Joseph continued to make up excuses. I feel bad, but I thought you'd forgive me if I apologized. I asked your sister if my mom could take care of the apartment. That would sort of everything out. My mother-in-law finally understood what was going on. No, I won't leave. No way, I refuse. She began to throw a temper tantrum as if she was a small child. I pulled out the final card up my sleeve. Does Joseph's father know about this? My mother-in-law froze. Her tears and temper were obviously just all an act. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Nice timing. It was my father-in-law. Last night, after calling my sister, I had actually also called my father-in-law. Turns out that my mother-in-law ran away from their home because her husband had said he wanted to divorce her. The reason she had huddled herself up in our apartment is because she wanted to escape his demands for a divorce. Being in their home was tough on her, so she spent as much time as possible in our apartment. Four of us sat down together and began to talk. I'm sick and tired of you. It's divorce. Didn't I tell you I didn't want to? This wasn't going anywhere. I decided to encourage my father-in-law. I pulled out my phone and showed my mother-in-law a photo. It was a photo I took around a month ago when I happened to go to the spa and see my mother-in-law with another man. She was far away from me, but I immediately recognized her from her horrible fashion sense. With this piece of evidence against her, she couldn't run away anymore. After accepting the divorce, she turned to Joseph. Joseph, I will take care of you, so I can stay with you, right? She tried to convince him. Joseph was so shocked to see the photo of his mother with another man that he didn't even notice she was talking to him. I was overwhelmed by how selfish she was. Joseph doesn't have a job or a house. The reason he goes out every day is because he's job hunting. You really know nothing about your son, even though you're here all day. My mother-in-law trembled out of frustration and shock. Also, you're jobless? Don't make fun of my son. Then let me surprise you with something else. I can't tell you the full details about my job, but I'm a shadow writer. I make over $75,000 a year. You're assumed I'm spending all day and playing around, but I make a lot of money. Since I worked at a ghostwriter, my work was pretty confidential. You hid this from me! No way, you must be lying! My mother-in-law finally accepted the truth and realized she couldn't fight back anymore. After all of this, I had lost my trust in Joseph, so I told him I wanted a divorce. He and my mother-in-law moved out of the apartment, and they left Joseph begging to give him another chance, but I refused. Joseph had no choice but to agree to the divorce. So our marriage came to an end after only 6 months. We had no property to divide or anything. Joseph just had to leave. Around the same time, Joseph's parents also officialized their divorce. Getting divorced really invigorated my ex-father-in-law, and now every day is like a celebration for him. Joseph and his mother were both unemployed, so they couldn't rent a new apartment. They had to rely on some relatives that let them use a really run-down apartment they owned. I made sure to claim rent and utilities for my mother-in-law for the 2 weeks that she lived here in the apartment that I was away. Joseph's father also claimed monetary damages from her. In order to pay off everything, Joseph and his mother began desperately working part-time. My ex-mother-in-law, so I'm sure I'll no longer be able to recognize her from afar. Though I had caused my sister trouble, she laughed and joked and said that I better take care of myself in her apartment from now on. From this experience, I relearned that it only becomes meaningful to get what I want after I put in my own effort to obtain it.